Welcome to The Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by kids with incredible taste in outdated music, because every witty kid memorizes obscure 90s bands. Let's dim the lights and start the show.
Welcome, everybody, to The Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by Viopril, the Cadillac of heart medication. Don't settle for the generic that delivers the same results. Go with your gut and trust your heart. Choose Viopril. Welcome, everybody, to The Pestle. I am Wes.
And I am Todd.
And we're filmmakers, writers, actors, a producer, and one extraordinarily reluctant producer. One is happy to do it and good. And one is good, but very unhappy to do it. Nice. So part of that, what we do here on the show is analyzing films coming from that aspect, right, of our understanding and our experience behind the camera, in front of the camera, post-production, all the things. And we try to get better based on what we can watch a film, demystify it a little bit, and see how to make our own processes. Man, I'm butchering this opening. How to get better at the process, all the while. And part of that is, of course, getting our own reps in, because what good is learning if you don't ever apply it? And so it's been a really slow year for me, which I may circle back to at some point. But this past week was very busy for you, sir. You were in town. You're based in San Francisco, more or less, and you flew into Austin, and you had a long week. You had an idea. You said you knew 3 weeks in advance. You're like, hey, I'm gonna be in town. Let's make something. I was like, okay. And so I sat down and spent just agonizing seconds and seconds creating a script. Like maybe 60 to 80 minutes. I had an idea and wrote the script and sent it to you, and had something to film so that you could come into town and we could make something together. And it was fun. I'll get into that a little bit, but you had an incredibly busy week with production on top of production. How was that for you, just in terms of cramming in a million things? What did your week look like from a high level?
I don't typically like to, I guess, say how busy I am. It just feels like, I'm just, doing things to do things. But it just so happened that, a lot of my life is still in Austin. So whenever I have a chance to go back there, I want to get as much done as I can, really. And I'm working on a record. So, and the producer's there in Austin. So I wanted to go through all the tracks with him. So one day when I first got there, the next day I went to the studio and spent the most of the day there going through all the tracks with him. The night I got in, we did our first night of filming, which was cool. I got in at 7:30. You picked me up. We went straight to set and started filming. That was fun. But after, I would say, the second day of filming, because I went to the studio the next morning, was there most of the day, and then we did filming that afternoon and evening. I could tell this was going to be a week, because I hadn't even started the filming of my. I was going down for a convention. Yeah. I was going down for a convention for my job, to film it. And it's a 3-day long convention. So, and I did all of that I just said before the convention even started. And then we had to do 2 more days of filming at least, with us. So I knew it was going to be long. And plus, after hours and stuff, there's parties and everything, because nobody in my company has seen each other for 2 years and all that stuff. So yeah, it was really busy and a lot, but I knew that if I just stay present and get through it, that by the end of the week, I'd be, pretty proud and happy about, everything that we did. And it was fun. and while moments of it, I was super exhausted. You know, those are the moments that you remember. You know, you don't remember the ones where you're just like, man, I have all the energy in the world. No, you remember the times when it's like you're questioning, why am I here? You know, like I want to go to bed, or I just want to go home, or whatever. I just want to do nothing, but you keep going, and those are the moments that you remember. And I think I'll definitely remember several moments because of that.
That's so funny. Like, so we shot on film, super 16 millimeter film. And I knew I wanted to shoot on this really, if for no other reason, just to get some reps in. I just haven't done enough shooting on super 16, and I want to shoot my feature on super 16. And it's just good practice to get a lot of practice in. Ideally, like 1,000 hours, right? You're just it's rote. You want to get to set and everything is rote. It doesn't feel like you're having to remember things. It's just a part of your hand, right? And so part of that process is obviously just getting as many reps as you can in. And so it's interesting shooting on film though. I've shot several projects now on film. And it's always a bit of a learning curve for everyone on set. And so I'm at a point now where I'm pretty comfortable. And that first night of filming, I remember we were about, I don't know, towards the end of it. And we were getting ready to roll a take, and you asked, you know, how you feeling? You nervous? I was like, no, I felt completely 100% comfortable. And zero anxiety at all. But I can also be a bit fatalistic, because there's points in any process where you have control, and there's points where you don't. Like I've been in car wrecks before where you could have measured my heartbeat and not seen any difference from, you know, me sitting on a seat, right? Just because, like, well, I'm not the driver. There's nothing I can do. So what does it matter? And so I can become very fatalistic. And at that point in the process, when you asked me, like, I'd already loaded the film. I'd already taken my readings. So there was just nothing for me to do other than, and I can't control your performance and everyone else on set. And so there's nothing for me to do. All I can do is try to capture it. But even that just felt very lax. And I was trying to get out of my head on capturing. I didn't walk in with a huge shot list of, I want 50 angles. Every take was a oneer. And I'm being very generous by calling most of these oneers. There was one like 4-minute take, 4.5. But other than that, they're all like 20, 30-second takes. And so not much of a oneer in that regard. But at the same time, I just didn't want to feel walking on the set, I need to get 1,000 things. Like, okay, I have a broad strokes idea of what I'm trying to grab. And it's okay if I change my mind on the day because I was trying to use some of the music. It's a story about a busker. It's inspired by the movie Once that we covered previously. And it was like, okay, I'm going to rely on music to provide transitions. So I didn't feel, and I don't know if it'll work, but that was the goal. And I think, we've got the potential there for it to work. And so I was not nervous at all, but I could see, there was a pressure there with y'all, with you, Jess, and Scott, on that first night, that especially as we had 3 rolls of film. Each roll of film gives you 11 minutes worth of footage. Not a lot, in digital age, it's virtually nothing, that's lint in your pocket compared to money. And so I could feel like there was, certainly some pressure, and there was some false takes, right? Where we got whether halfway into the take and there was just a blooper. But for the most part, y'all did a good job of pushing through it. Even if those takes weren't exactly usable, I still knew y'all didn't abandon. Y'all did entirely. Like, y'all pulled out maybe for 4 or 5 seconds before trying to jump back in. And I appreciated that, even if it's not flawless. What mattered to me was you didn't completely stop the scene. Like, that's a good way for me to fire you on the set and completely never use you again. Like, if you abandon a take in the middle of the take and say, and an actor should never yell cut. And the number of times I've seen actors do that, right? Or they flub a line and they just cut. Like, no MFer, like that is not your job. Your job is to stay there, stay in it. And so y'all did a really great job of that. And we rolled through that first film, that first roll, and we all knew we didn't have it yet. We had a potential take. This could probably work. This could probably work. And if at worst came to worst, I knew in post I could do a jump cut in between two takes, and it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world because the film itself is very jump cutty. And so I wasn't going to tell y'all that. I didn't want y'all to feel too at ease, but I knew in my mind there's workarounds. But there was that moment when we loaded up the second roll, and we only had 2 rolls for filming at night. And the take that y'all were doing was a good 4-minute take. And I don't want to do the math for y'all, but 4 minutes out of an 11-minute roll, it's a lot, especially when you have to get a bunch of other, scenes with the rest of that 11 minutes, with the rest of that roll. And so I was getting to the point of contingency. I was like, okay, it's not, flawless. What I can do is instead I'll start moving into coverage. And you and Jess were both like, no, give us one more take. I promise we're right there. We'll get it. I'm like, okay. I'm pretty easy on that front. I like to trust my people, and y'all nailed it. It was a great take. I'm excited to see it. Hopefully I took the lens cap off.
Hopefully you hit record.
Yeah.
Well, you did. Cause
yeah, the timer was going, right. The counter on the side of the film camera was rolling, and we got to the end, and I was like, that was awesome. But I could see what was cool, and I'm interested to hear, your perspective on this, was I could feel the impact of that first night and what it meant for the rest of the shooting days. And I'm so glad Scott was wrapped, because we got a couple of his scenes out of the way before we rolled you and Jess, the big scene. And Scott stuck around, which was really cool. And he helped slate. We didn't have a slate. Normally you have a clapper loader on set. Maybe your second AC is slating everything so that Super 16, there's no optical strip in the film. So you can't record audio at all. There's 0 audio attached to the film strip, which means if you're going to sync the video footage to audio, we have a sound man on set. Sergio was gracious enough to help us out on set and donate his time and skill. And if you're going to do a really good job of syncing that, you need something visually to sync to. And so Scott slating was a big deal, right? That's that clapper thing that you see people, clap, and him sticking around really helped, for sure, with syncing audio, but also I could see he also began to feel what it meant to roll film, because every time I yell market, so the way you usually, it's a little different from how you slate video. Video you slate, and this is what it sounds like. Roll sound, sound man says sound speeds. Then you call for the film, you say roll camera speeds, mark it or slate it, or call it. And then your clapper loader will say whatever, take 1, scene 1, blah, 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 mark, and he claps it. Well, on film, you can't do all that because every single second that you're rolling film needs to be useful. So instead, you wait to start rolling film until after they've called it, because all you need is the audio of him calling it and the visual of the contact of the slate making contact with itself. And that produces a very sharp sound that the audio picks up, that spike in the audio, as well as a visual element for you to see in camera. And so the way you do it in film is, roll sound speeds, call it, and now roll whatever, roll 1, take scene 1, take 1, and then roll camera speeds, mark it, mark, clap, out. And now instead of spending that extra 5-6 seconds rolling film, you've saved 5 or 6 seconds for stuff that actually matters. And having someone on set to help with that is a big deal. But I could feel from the rest of that, because Scott stuck around and helped, the way he was performing, and I think even more the way rehearsals were taking from there on out were much, much better. The quality of rehearsals shot up, whatever, not that it's a quantitative thing, but tenfold, like 100-fold, like, because the rehearsals sucked. When we were on set rehearsing you and Jess, they were extra mediocre. But as soon as we started rolling, suddenly it was like, okay, I get it now. And then after that, like, y'all came together really well that night. And then the rehearsals for the rest of the week were fantastic. Like, every time we rehearsed, it felt like we were rolling because y'all were there. It felt, from my perspective anyway, it felt very more present. And y'all were giving the performance before you had to give the performance, so that I could get a good feel for, this is what's going to happen. Here's some adjustments we can make. And from there on, the efficiency was just dynamite. And that's, for me, has been my experience on every set that I've been on. You need everyone to feel it a little bit at the beginning, and then it really pays dividends later on, because the process begins to take on another tone, another set of expectations, and importance begins to really set in. I don't know. That's from the camera operating side. What was it any different for you? Did you feel any different?
Yeah, I 100% agree. Scott sticking around changed a lot, because all of a sudden we have a crew, and we kind of did with Serge being there, running sound, which, again, like Wes said, thank you, Serge, for that. That was massive. I mean, we're talking about a busker on a corner. If it sounds bad, it's going to be a shitty show. So yeah, but having Scott there too, it was a little bit more of a crew based kind of situation, which felt a little bit more important, and a little bit more like legit, I guess, if you want to call it, even though, that doesn't really matter. We've been on sets with no crew at all, and it's just as important, but it just felt different. But I mean, I have to say, shooting on film is nothing like shooting on a digital camera, nothing at all. And when I say nothing, I really mean nothing. I mean, like, shooting on a digital camera feels, after shooting on film, it feels flat. It feels unimportant. It feels like you're just capturing you're just capturing what happens. But on film, there's so much more, and I don't want to call it pressure. It's pressure, I guess. But you should feel pressure regardless, because you're trying to, as an actor, you're an actor, trying to perform, or you're just trying to react in a way that does justice to what the director sees, right? Yeah. So if you're, you happen to be the director and the writer on this, but in some cases they're different. So the director is trying to say, this is what I want to see or feel, and you're trying to give that, right? But in this case, there's this added, like, I want to call it analog. I want to call it like analog feeling. Like, if you're a musician, you kind of know what I'm talking about. There is a difference between digital and analog, and there's something that analog gives you that you just can't get from digital. And I can tell you what that is sonically, but when you're talking about film, I can't really tell you what that is. It just is like a feeling of organic. This is organic feeling, right? That's what I felt on it. Like when I had the scene with Jess, the scene that actually worked, right? It felt organic. And nothing about it felt, I don't know. It's hard to explain. You have, it's a very technical camera that you have. I'm not saying that it's any less technical than, a Red or something, right? It's just, there's more moving parts. I'm burning something, right? Like, it is final. Whatever goes into that camera is final. You can't go back and delete it. So there's that feeling of just be in the moment, because that's all you've got is that moment, and it's capturing that moment, and I can't undo it. Which kind of forced me, honestly, to relax more, right? And to be more authentic or like more like in the moment, more present, because I didn't have the luxury of thinking during a take. I didn't have that luxury. I had to, at least this is how I felt. And I don't know how you feel when you act on film, but like I felt like if I didn't do that, like we sit here and we talk about actors and acting and acting is reacting and all that stuff and everything. But to put it into practice, it's a lot easier to do when you know that you have to, right? I've got 2, maybe 3 takes at this, right? So if I don't react and I don't, like get out of my own head, then he won't get it. I know he won't. Or he'll get it, but he won't like it, or it won't be right. It won't be real. So it just felt almost freeing to say, okay, just let it all go, because he won't get it if you don't. And if you do, he might get it.
It was cool to watch because it's very, in football, you have what you call the 2-minute drill, right? At the end of a half, the 2-minute warning goes off, right? Referees stop the ball or stop the clock. And then there's just a level of focus that kicks in. And I could see that happen, when we started that final take. There was just a focus that just kicked in. Y'all went into a zone. And it was amazing because y'all were both aware of what you needed to do for the camera. Well, you didn't have to do anything because you didn't have a camera strap. And so I couldn't move you around, unfortunately. Or maybe fortunately, I don't know. But just
the guitar strap? The guitar strap.
Yeah, sorry. Right. Yeah, you didn't have the guitar strap. So out of frame is you standing on the camera box.
Yeah, you can do what you got to do.
Whatever you got to do in order to keep the guitar propped up so that you can actually play your guitar standing. But Jess had these movements that she had to do in order to open up to the camera or adjust for the frame. And I could see her feeling it while still maintaining focus on what you were both doing for each other, delivering lines and character and just this general, genuine connection that y'all were creating there in the moment. And it was really cool to see just y'all go into a zone. And I became secondary to everything that was happening between y'all. I was like, yeah, and you're right. I mean, it's the pressure, but there is something more than that, because pressure just sounds so, I don't know, atavistic, right? It's just, a little too primal. It's not that. It's something ascendant. And I know we're sounding pretentious as all hell right now, but yeah. If you've ever been in a moment where you had to deliver, right? You get up to deliver a speech. There's no do-overs when you get up, to give a speech, a toast at a wedding or whatever. It's now or never. And there's just something else that kicks in your brain that says, here we are. Whatever happens is going to happen. It's time to just let go and see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a thing. I've done, several projects, as an actor, but I think I learned more doing this one thing with you on film than anything cumulatively that I've done, in the past. And I think it all comes down to this feeling free to let go. Right? Like give me an excuse to completely let go. Because as human beings, it's very hard for us to do that. It's very hard, even as actors, you train, and you go into projects and you think, and you tell yourself, let go. Right? You can tell yourself all that all day, but actually doing it, I mean, that's what makes the best actors the best. They completely let go of themselves or whatever, and they just let it happen. They don't actually act, they just kind of are there, right? And I think that what this did was it gave me a reason and I don't even know if it's good. It might suck, dude, honestly, but like be in that one take and a few of the other takes that we did like the next couple of nights, I felt like like I had an excuse to completely not be me, right? Not be Todd, to just completely like let it go, and whatever happened. But I needed that excuse, and I've never felt that before on any other set, to have that excuse to like completely let go. I also haven't done a project where I've needed to be honest, but shooting on film gave me that, because I had to.
Yeah, and I tried to, as much as I could, like foster that attitude of there's nothing precious in the script. Like, I don't need you to deliver the lines. I need you to deliver the attitude and the tone, and your character, whoever it is, like find them and go there. And so I appreciated your willingness to throw things at the wall and be okay if they didn't stick, right? There's a line you were playing with, and I was like, we kept playing with it, and I was like, it's not working for me. You're like, cool, whatever, like, here's where we are. And there was plenty of scenes where I was trying to get you to not look at the script at all. I was like, whatever, don't even look. Yeah. let's play around a little bit. Let's talk it out. I think for a lot of actors, especially if you're not a really seasoned actor, it's hard to go from the page to performance without it feeling like you're still on the page. There's a certain thing that happens in your voice whenever you're reading lines off a page that's not going to happen if you're not reading. Whenever you're being a human being, and this is where I encourage actors to just listen to conversations. Like, if you get into a conversation with two other people, step outside your body for a minute and just listen to them. Listen to their pitch, listen to their rhythms, listen to their flows. Like, you'll hear all kinds of variations in pitch. Whereas when people are reading off the page, suddenly everything goes a little bit more monotone. If you imagine the wavelength as this bar moving, in the middle, it's a lot more in the middle. Whereas, there's all these peaks and valleys in a normal conversation of people just being, right? People just talking, and the pitch just goes all over the place. And so, as much as I could, and I love the idea of the script isn't precious. Instead, we're going to get so much more natural. We'll find those rhythms so much easier by not even thinking about, what's written on the page. Instead, we'll remember what's there, and it's going to be imprecise. And that precision is what's going to create all this life and all this naturalism, because you're just kind of remembering what's there, but you don't know. So you're kind of also ad-libbing. It's this meshing of these two things. And I think there's something so much more beautiful and fluent in humanity with that attitude. And so I was really, proud of your work. I agree. I have no idea if it's going to turn out. If it doesn't, it won't be your fault. It'll be the writer director. But I'm okay with taking that L.
There are a couple of. I really appreciated that too, of like, you don't have to get all the words right, because, some directors are very, script heavy, and that's what it's got to be. And that's really hard to do as an actor, to, like you said, to like be exactly on script, but it to feel real. So those actors, like Denzel Washington, is probably one of the best at it, I would say. Because, like, you don't do Shakespeare and exactly right and be amazing at it unless you're an amazing actor on a whole nother level. But there are words in the script that are vital, right? In your script in particular, there was one where I was supposed to say "not yet," like, as in, like, this isn't my job yet. And, I skipped it a couple of times in rehearsals, and Jess had the forthright to say, knowledge to say, hey, we actually need that word, that we actually need you to say that, because that is the emphasis of the whole thing, right? That's not yet. I'm working towards that as a character, right? But other than that, as long as that's said in a certain way, right? Like, it doesn't matter when it comes. It doesn't matter how it comes. It just needs to come. And then that triggers her to react to me saying that. So yeah, there are certain words, but for the most part, yeah, we kind of just reacted to each other in that last scene. And so however it turns out, it was fun and exciting, and it was a good script. I really enjoyed it, and a lot of work. So I really hope it turns out well.
Ditto. Yeah, and I'm gonna see if you can do some fun scoring stuff that I have in mind for it, and maybe
I'd love to
elevate it just a little bit more. I think that's what filmmaking in a nutshell is. It's a totality of a bunch of little bitty things. And if you can put all these little bitty things together, you can come up with a really good film. Maybe something even as good as, what are we covering today, man?
Nice. Good segue there. Today we are covering The Host. If you haven't seen the film, please pause it and go watch it. It's the Bong Joon Ho film from, what is it, 2006?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, from 2006. So if you haven't seen it, please pause this episode and go watch it.
Yeah, we'll look at a few things. We'll look at a little bit of the monster origin story, how everyone's a moron, some of the directing and editing, the use of match cuts, and other such stuff and things and stuff.
And a quick synopsis of the film. When a monster emerges from Seoul's Han River and begins attacking people, one victim's loving family does what it can to rescue her from the monster's clutches. It's directed by Bong Joon Ho, screenplay by Bong Joon Ho, Won-jun and Chul-hyun Baek, cinematography by Hyung Koo Kim, featuring Song Kang-ho as Gang-do, Byun Hee-Bong as the father, Park Hae-il as Nam-il, Doona Bae as Nam-Joo, and Ko Sang as Hyun-seo.
Nice. No clip today. I debated playing the intro with the American military scientist, but it still mixes in a fair amount of Korean, and so we'll just jump straight in. So I remember, I want to say you even recommended this at one point, but it's probably been a while since you've seen it, so I'm curious. Is this still a fun film for you?
It really is. I want to say I probably saw it in 2016 or so. So yeah, it's been about 7 years. But yeah, it really is a fun film for me because, stuff happens right away. I mean, that opening shot is so beautiful. It's so beautiful of them in the morgue, I guess is where they are, because there's formaldehyde and stuff. Just that still open shot of the two shot of both of the doctors, and it just stays there for quite a while, and it's very moody. The lighting is so gorgeous and
textures all over the place. Yeah,
it's very contrasty, and it sets the precedent. We never go back to them. We never see those doctors again. It just gives you a sense of foreboding, right? So anyway, I loved how it started. I loved the characters. I mean, I think that one of Bong Joon Ho's massive strengths is his ability to mix comedy with horror in just the right way. And I feel like he did that really well in this film. I mean, there is a lot of horror. We never see almost any blood. I mean, there's a little bit, like when the father dies, and a couple other moments, but it's very, it's not very, I guess, gory, but there's this sense of gore, right? Where when the monster throws up all the human bones and throws up people that are actually dead, or like starts sucking in somebody who's dead or something like that, or whatever, or like it'll do this thing where it cuts away right before something terrible happens when he catches the kids, when the monster catches the kids at the end. So there's this sense of horror and this sense of dread, but it's not so heavy that I can't rewatch this, right? I mean, you know how I feel about kids dying in films, and his daughter ends up dying. I didn't remember that.
I didn't either. That completely took me by surprise.
Right?
Because it's not
I was
gory.
waiting for her to wake up.
Yeah, same.
But the little boy wakes up. And that's such a better story. It's such a better story that the little boy wakes up, because him as a father, he's a failed father. He's an absolute, total piece of trash, right? And yet you don't ever get that sense of that, right? So he's a guy who failed his daughter at the beginning, but is trying to, his best to make up for that, right? And then, but he's slow. He doesn't take action. He's he makes mistakes a lot. He's messy. He doesn't bathe, like, you know, all of these things. He thinks he's grabbing her hand at the beginning and he's grabbed somebody else's. How can you make that mistake? You know, that's, you know, your first, because then in his mind, the first thing he was thinking about was fleeing, not who am I fleeing with? And so, yes, it was 100% his fault. Right. And so, and then at the end to see him take such charge and to take that woman hostage to get out of where he was and to find her was really important because it showed what it showed his daughter was strong enough to know, I need to take care of this little boy. Right? It showed that he had what was in her. She had what was in him. It just hadn't come out yet. Right? And so we see that in her, and she sacrifices herself for that little boy. And then at the end where they're sitting at the dinner table, you know, he's ready for it to happen. He's got the gun next to him. He's going to protect this little boy at all costs, no matter what. That will never happen again. And so they both have this kind of coming to this heroic status at the end. Even though he technically fails by not saving her, he ends up killing the monster, and he ends up, you know, getting himself together and being the father that he always should have been for her at the beginning, being the man that basically this journey of trying to save her turned him into, or brought out of him, I should say, not turned him into, but brought out of him. Yeah, I don't. There are a couple things, like I don't know the whole the bottomizing situation. Yeah. I don't know how he could still have the function he had after that actually happened. I did not remember that happening. I thought, how's he going to get out of this? This is horrible.
And
that was the most horrific scene in the whole film for me. Was him begging to be let out. Because I mean, what an amazing actor he is. Like, just, I don't know. I don't even have any words for him to go to this kind of, you know, aloof dude to, you know, being so scared in that moment and then being so heroic at the end. Like, that takes a monumental jump for it to be believable, I should say. Anybody can do that independent from one another, but for it to be believable, his journey is amazing.
It really is. And it's, you know, to your point about him as an actor, Song Kang-ho, it's easy to see why Bong Joon Ho keeps going back to him, because he's been in a lot of his films, Parasite and Memories of Murder. He's just a staple in a lot of Bong Joon Ho films. And to that end, I mean, I also appreciate Bong Joon Ho as a creator because he does these really artsy films like a Memories of Murder, like a Parasite, and yet he's not above a monster film. Now it's a monster film with something to say, but it's like the CG isn't flawless, right? It's not this 150 million. I'm sure he would have loved to have had an extra, 10, 15 million to make it that much better. But he was happy to do with what he could. And it sells it. Like, I don't really need this monster to be any better, to be honest. Like, I don't agonize over, it's not. And I think it comes back to what you said about him mixing in the comedy with the dramatic, because it creates this very strange world where you don't need everything to be perfect. Like, imperfections are welcome. And I still really enjoy this film. I hadn't seen it probably since not long after it came out. I watched it once or twice and then hadn't picked it up since. I thought I had it pretty well in my head until I started going through it, and I'm like, oh crap. This opening scene of the attack happens 10 minutes into the movie. Like,
yeah, it's like right away.
And I think at this point in, you know, cinema, 2006, we're used to having to wait to see the monster, right? The monster usually picks people off a little bit until the big reveal and, you know, halfway through the second act or something. And here we are, like 10 minutes in, broad daylight, and he's attacking everybody. Like, he is going nuts.
And let me call out, this is not a short film. This is a 2-hour movie. And within the first 10 minutes, maybe less, we're like dealing with the monster.
It's amazing. It's, it's really astounding. And it kind of takes your breath away, I think, the first time you watch it, especially in that era. But it works, man. I don't need this, flawless T-Rex Jurassic Park, level of visual effects to make me be afraid of, the monster and everyone's safety, Hyun-seo, and her going toe to toe with that thing. It's amazing. And that tech, oh my God, I love it because people start throwing trash into the river. That's when it attacks. And so there's this environmental message that this film is kind of approaching, which so I would call this a man versus nature film, right? And half of these kinds of films, there's no victory. It's just survival. Now, in this case, there's a monster that you can kill and you can get an actual victory. And so that's kind of cool. And I love that, this is a film with a monster that is created out of our irresponsibility. So it, the origin story of this monster is right there at the beginning, and he does a good job of baby stepping it. I would say most creature features have some origin story. There's a rare few that don't give you an origin story. And I can't even think of any off the top of my head. But even those are like, it came from outer space, right? Most creature features really give you some idea of where this thing started from. And so in this case, we open, like you said, on that lab. He dumps the formaldehyde, right? The American military scientist makes the Korean scientist dump the formaldehyde into the Han River, right? And he's lecturing him, right? He's very condescending to his coworker or his underling, however you assume that scene is working out, because he gives him an order, so I guess it's an underling. And he's like, but if we do that, they will run into the Han River. And he's like, the Han River is a very broad river. Let's try our best to be broad-minded about this. I'm like, what? That sounds like perfect military logic to me. And as we exit that scene, I love that pan shot, right? We're on this dolly shot, just sliding over to our right to reveal everything. And they do a great job of packing out the frame because there's probably only like 100 bottles, but the way they stack them, they're stacked not super deep. There's probably, 4 or 5 bottles deep, but they stack it very wide. And so it makes 100 bottles feel like 1,000, because now you can lower the camera a little bit and you have a nice tall shot of a bottle, but that sense of depth is there as well. So it feels like the frame is being completely overrun by these bottles of empty formaldehyde. And they also use a great dissolve there, because we go from that, as it's rolling through just countless infinite bottles of toxic waste, and it dissolves to a shot of the Han River. And it's a beautiful way to transition, because it emphasizes how the chemicals in the river have blended together, because we're seeing the literal frame blend together. So that's a really good use of a dissolve there. And of course, we graduate from the source and now we're in the river. We're seeing the fishermen find a tiny mutated fish, right, in Han River. And they watch it swim away. And I love this because we never actually see the fish in any of these opening shots, right? It's just this little thing that you can see in a cup and you can't even see it with the naked eye as it's swimming away. And we're all looking, right? Can we see it? Can we see it? No, we can't even see it. Dang. And then we cut to a man on the bridge who's jumping to his death. And he sees something dark in the water. And no one sees it except him. And what does he say? Morons to the very end. And that's, of course, very foreshadowing, prophesizing of what we're going to be experiencing in this film. And so then we get to the attack, right? We finally see the monster hanging off a bridge. And I love how no one knows what it is. Like, what is that, like equipment that they left over? Construction stuff? And then it unfurls and drops into the river. And our guy, our brilliant moron, Gong-do, throws a can that was supposed to be for his customer. Once again, just wasting and giving away people's stuff. He throws a can into the river and it takes it and then everyone does it, right? And then suddenly it's just everyone, and it's so perfect because it's kind of underscoring once again the whole idea of this film is this monster was, you know, born out of wasteful dumping into this river, and here we are, people dumping, you know, waste into the river again, trash, and then it attacks. It doesn't start attacking until they do that. So in some sense, you're pointing the microscope, you know, at us instead of at the monster. And I love how they introduce this monster though, because the first time we see it, it's, you know, the reaction of Gong-do. He sees something in the distance, and we do this reverse cut, reverse POV of the monster running down the sidewalk of the river, and it's quiet at first, and then the drums start to kick in, and it's so freaking great because it's surreal. It gives you this sense of surrealness that he's experiencing. Like, wait, what? And it gives you a solid several seconds of just digesting what you're witnessing. And it reminds me a lot of Jaws, that scene of the second attack of, you know, someone getting attacked off the shore. And first it's very unassuming before it's grandiose. And he gives you this moment, Bong Joon Ho, just absorbing this monster, huge, running and chasing people down and knocking them over. I don't even know if he eats anybody at that point. But you just sit in it for several seconds before the music really, you know, those drums start beating, right? And it's a great, like, racing heartbeat kind of rhythm. Very dramatic, gorgeous. And that's when all hell breaks loose, right? And from there, I love too, because there's this really nice wonder of Gong-do kind of running around the pier and trying to, like, escape it, and, you know, stopping, and this thing is stumbling around, which we'll come back to very shortly. But then we cut to quiet music, and it's a close-up of this girl digging in her fingernails with a paperclip. And then she gets killed. Like, it knocks her down, grabs her. I don't know if we see it eat her, but it drags her for like 20 feet. And we're just right there with her, seeing her get banged around, dragged by her head. It's bloodless, like you said. It's bloodless, but also horrifying. It's very dramatic, and it's a great use of, I don't know, just empathy, I guess, to create the horror in our heads. And then we see him. The daughter steps out, and he grabs her, and that's a beautiful shot because she steps out, and we're like, oh God, what's going to happen? And then suddenly he runs by and grabs her, all in like one shot. It's a really beautiful shot. And then we're with them. He stumbles, right? Falls down, gets up, grabs her hand, starts running again, only to realize it's not her. And I love this shot of the reveal because they cut to this girl, and it's this girl that has glasses and braids. And it's a quick, easy visual distinction from Hyun-seo, who is not wearing glasses, who has very short hair, let alone braids, not wearing braids. And so at a glance, this is helping the audience understand what's wrong. It's instantaneous visual communication, which is exactly what you need in this scene that's just racing. You need to be able to very quickly communicate what is and is not right. And it's just a great job of casting and wardrobe to set up a smart, quick, instantaneous distinction for the audience to grab onto. Yeah. And so from there, you know, all kinds of things are happening, but at the heart of it all is everyone is a complete moron. And I love it because, like, heroes and government officials alike are nearly all idiots, right? There's all this slipping and falling to underscore it. A lot of this throughout the entire film, everyone is slipping and falling down the entire film. A lot of comedy comes out of that, but also a lot of horror. The monster is constantly itself slipping around, right? Knocking down his victims even. And so even though it's ungraceful, it's also using it as a tactic, right? There's times where it just knocks someone down before it grabs them. And it's just like a football player like running through the field and like, okay, I may not be graceful, but you know what I can do is beat your ass and then eat you. And so Gong-do also, right? Falling down the entire time. He goes to meet his daughter for the first time, and he just falls out of his shoes like a moron. Even when he's escaping the hospital, right? He knocks down that girl in the hospital who later becomes a witness with the voice thing, right? And they're like, we know who you are, despite the voice thing. And so the government official, the first time they're in the hospital trying to recover, and you have this gov official in a hazmat suit who's walking very official-like, and then he slips and busts his ass. And then he gets up and tries to like retain some authority. And the entire team later on, they set up that really smart sting operation to capture Nam-il, right? He's going into his buddy's office to radio in or find the cell phone signal source, location. We're going to find her. And they have like 15 people, and they're just bumbling around, right? The entire team botches a capture of Nam-il, and just clumsy, and they get locked in. The whole family at the memorial falls down, right? And that's a beautiful sequence because it starts as really heartbreaking. You're seeing them start to mourn, and your heart's going out to them for, a good 15, 20 seconds. You're like, man, this sucks, because you cut to this picture of Hyun-seo, and it's just the most adorable picture you've ever seen in your life. She's got this really big smile with the snaggle tooth. You're just like, oh my God, this is horrible. Like, I feel terrible. And then what's so good is the brother walks in, and he's drinking, and you instantly know this is the brother, the drunk uncle. And he's taking the last drink, and he's watching, and you can feel his judgment on his family as he's just watching them cry and wail. And he looks at the girl, and we're like, finally, we have someone responsible. And then he goes berserk, even crazier than all of them. And then they all start hugging, and they all collapse onto the ground. And we cut to this beautiful overhead shot of them all wrangling around on the ground. It's so bad.
Hilarious.
Oh, it turns this heartbreaking moment into a farce, right? It's just really fantastic, and it's completely underscored by the music that takes on this kind of circus, trapeze artist kind of tone, just clowns. It becomes a total clown show, and it's just a great choice of music. It's so weird. It's Bong Joon Ho in a nutshell. And then, of course, his sister isn't quite as big of a moron, but she still has some moronic tendencies. Like, she's very slow, right? That's her whole problem is she's indecisive maybe, or just slow to act. And we see that as she's going for the goal. It's in her grasp, and she waits until half a second after the buzzer to release her shot, and she gets bronze. That becomes her bag of shame that she kind of, walks around with. And of course, at the end of the film, she's redeemed, but not before she does it again, right? She's right there. She sees the monster, and she waits until it's right on top of her before she releases, and she gets knocked out. Like, she pays a price for that, for sure. But, of course, you have the perfect moment at the end of the film, maybe slightly too perfect, but I think in the moment, the first time you're watching it, it's awesome. Like, you're just like, yeah, because you have Nam-il, this drunkard who's finally lined up everything, right? He's got the Molotov cocktail, and he's going for the kill, and he just drops it. He just perfect emblematic moment of the entire family of, we got everything exactly the way we needed, and I just couldn't hold on to it. And then she comes up, picks up the slack, because this is her gold medal. She hits a bullseye, for the pun. And so, however, I think you could make a really good argument, not a moron, Hyun-seo, because she finds herself, like you said, being the mom that she never had to this little boy. And that's just a really beautiful, sequence to see them interacting together. It's really cool when you have two good kids acting on screen together through good writing and good directing. Like, it's really hard to make all those things kind of come together to sing. And they really do in this film. Those two together on screen just melt. But she also has some really great epic failures, right? Because you see Hyun-seo taking control of her fate, and that makes her a very likable and rootable character. Like, it's absolutely easy to get on her side and be like, yes, someone is finally going to do something to figure this thing out. And she makes the rope, right, out of clothing, and finds this baton to latch it all onto. And she throws it up, right? She tosses it up, but it's too short. And that's kind of her moronic moment of she just didn't make it long enough. You can't really blame her for that, though. There's only so many clothes. Mm-hmm. Sometimes there's just not enough rocks. And so the other part of her brilliance, though, is whenever the monster comes back, right, you have that massive bone dump. And that's an incredible moment. Because up until that point, you don't really understand why he's not eating everybody. Why would he save her? Why wouldn't he just eat her? What's going on? Until he coughs up that skull. Because at first she thinks, oh, we might have someone else to help us. So she's waiting on a body, hopefully a living person like her. No, it's a freaking skull. And then, it just pours out bones. And then suddenly, once again, through great visual communication, we understand two things at once. One, the reason he hasn't been eating everyone is he's been digesting. Two, he's now no longer full and he's ready for a new meal. And so there's this immediate understanding and fear that kicks in simultaneously. And it's just beautiful. And so he starts snacking on all these bodies, and Hyun-seo and the little boy dash out, barely make it. So the monster continues feasting, right? And then he takes a nap. And now this is, once again, Hyun-seo having this light bulb moment. Okay, I'm going to throw this can. And I love that beer moment. I love whenever they're talking about all the food they want to eat. And what does she say? I just want a cold beer. She just wants to be with her dad.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah. What a great line, because she hated the beer. But she loves her dad.
Yeah.
And she takes this beer and she throws it, hits the monster, sees it doesn't move. Okay, I'm going to make a dash. And she lays it out for the little boy like, hey, don't move. I'll be back. I'm bringing everyone. I'm bringing doctors, the military, government officials, scientists, Funyuns, root beer. We're going to do everything. And she does it. It's such a great moment. She makes the run. She makes the jump. She grabs it, right? And then just everything freezes. Her face goes still and we start rotating around. And it's just this amazing moment where she releases the rope and she's just floating. And we're like, whoa. And it's just this bang, bang moment of how in the world is she floating? Oh my God, the monster has her. What a great reveal. What a brilliant idea. Because there's a million ways that you could approach this of, the monster gets her, right? There's a thousand ways Bong Joon Ho and his other writers could have approached that scene. It's in the outline. The monster's going to get her and he's going to take her to the big zone, right? With the big finale. How do we build up to this moment where he gets her? Well, we don't want her to be an idiot, right? She doesn't just get got, and it's a little too easy for him to just snake his tail into the hole and grab her. And now he wins. Instead, let's make it about her brilliance and also having an epic failure, because we respect her try. We absolutely respect her doing whatever she can to save her and the boy. Okay, well, how do we build that out? And it's just a really great moment because the tension is built from there as the monster lowers her. And that's just devilish. What a great devilish moment. Because that could have been it. We could have just thrown her into his mouth. And instead, he lowers her. And we're going to create all kinds of tension. And it's built in the stillness. Because up until that moment, right, there was a lot of action. And now we're just creating more and more tension through stillness. And we wait ages to create this sense of tension in order to give contrast to tiny movements. Because if you go bang, bang, bang from there, it loses a little bit of its impact. Whereas if you just kind of take a moment, let her tell the boy some things, and nothing move, no one moves. Now suddenly, tiny movements, right? The boy wetting his pants. Suddenly you can feel that a lot better, which is a really unfortunate phrase. But you can see like the movement on the screen of him wetting himself. And the little tiny movements of Hyun-seo, right? We pan or tilt down to see her feet, and we see her just slowly twist her foot to get into position to make a sprint. And the sound suddenly is big. It's echoing in our ears. It's tiny sound, but it's so loud now. And then just that little movement, and it's like maybe 6 frames. We cut to the monster's eye as it slightly moves, and then all hell breaks loose. What a great, that contrast is just so brilliant. And he really earns it by creating a long moment of stillness. Because from there, bang, 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 suddenly it feels like there's not enough time in the world. A minute ago, we had all the time in the world, and now it's just not there. Just genius. I just adore his directing. My God.
Couldn't agree more. That scene was so stressful.
Oh
my gosh.
And of course, he gets her. We don't know what happens next, but beyond that, a lot of great match cuts in the directing. I love the match cut from there because Gong-do immediately after that scene walks up on the den, right? He finds the monster's nest, and he starts to lower himself down, and he sees, wait, this is all empty. Where is she? And then he looks up and sees the monster walking overhead, sees his daughter's hand, and now it's on. Like the race is on. He starts climbing up, and there's this match cut that goes from below with him reaching up, and we cut to the top of where his hand should be, except now we're back to Nam-Joo, and she's climbing out of her hole. And now we've established 2 things. One, he's getting out, but also she's back conscious again. So now she's back in the game. And it's just a really lovely match cut because there's a sense of dissonance that happens because, like, wait, he was on a graded tower, right? That's how the baton was able to latch onto the thing. And there's just this moment of confusion before you realize, oh, we're back to her. And it's a woman's hand, of course. They have another match cut before that, much before that, with the little boy and his father. They go from them together running from the monster, and they find a storage room that they're about to get to. And then we cut to the door being opened by the family. And so they match cut this one idea of them escaping, only to find out they probably didn't escape, but now we're also back to the family, which is also just one of those beautiful, heartbreaking scenes because that's the scene where the family starts eating dinner. And then suddenly Hyun-seo joins in. She pops up.
Yeah, I was like, what where am I? What, they got her? No, this is weird. Yeah.
And it takes a minute,
for
right?
a loop for sure.
Yeah, it takes a minute before you realize this is a bit of a fantasy because they all quietly start feeding her bites of their food. And so you can feel 2 things. One, the family thinking about her. But then you cut to her. She's thinking about food, but she's also thinking about her family. But maybe mostly food. Like she's very, very hungry.
Damn hungry. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's all I really have for, as far as notes go. I just think it's a really great film. It's a 2-hour film. You definitely start to feel it, right around the halfway point. But it's all earned. I don't think it's very wasteful at all. I could certainly make an argument for places I might chop out but I think it would hurt some of the thematic elements that they're getting to, which we will circle back to here in a few minutes. But man, I adore it. I think it's a really interesting idea, really interesting monster. You don't see a lot of weird fish out of water stories with a literal fish out of water eating people. It's a pretty unique monster, and it's hard to find, a fresh take on a monster idea, let alone an execution that goes this well with it. Yeah. So
yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's maybe not his best work, but I think it's one of my favorite pieces of his work. It's like definitely for me, one of the most rewatchable Bong Joon Ho films. I could watch it again right now, which says a lot because it is 2 hours, which is pretty long. And I think I want to say maybe almost exactly halfway, I looked to see how much longer is this movie. Oh, it's an hour longer. Oh, okay. So I think you're spot on with the halfway point being wondering like, where is this? How much longer? Like, where is this going? But I felt that the directing was fantastic. The editing, to your point, was amazing. The acting is incredible. The scripting is incredible too. I mean, the way the dad dies is amazing. Where what is it? Gang-do realizes it. That's a wonderful moment because up until that point, I saw the father as the hero. The dad was, he did. I mean, he paid $11,000 or something to get them out of captivity, right? And then the first thing that happens is the kids are complaining about the map and you paid $500 for this. Why would you do that? Da, da, da. And I just wanted to slap him in the face, and he just stayed quiet.
Yeah,
he just, you have no idea, son, what I just did for you. And then getting them through the barricade to get out by giving away the change, right? And then all of these things, it was like he got stronger as necessity deemed it so, right? Whatever needed to happen, he was going to make it happen. He was dad. And that was so beautiful to me. And I definitely related to that. And I saw that and so that when he died, I felt it, it could have been, if the brother died before he had a chance to prove, how vital he was to the team, I guess, or to humanity, I probably wouldn't have felt that, but because the father did all these things and there was it was brilliant in directing to keep him quiet, to not to not attack his kids for attacking him. When the brother and the sister were attacking Gang-do, saying he was an idiot and all that stuff. He was, albeit they were falling asleep when he was giving them the explanation. He explained like, look, he's been through this and that and all his things, and I think there's something wrong with him and everything. So be loving towards him. He's being a father the whole time, even up to the end. And so, in the end, you're thinking, oh, he's going to fix this too. I mean, you kind of know he's not going to fix it, I think, but he at least has a tool to fix it. And then to show Gang-do counting on his fingers does so much. One, it tells you, oh, he made a mistake thinking he had another shell in the gun because he didn't count it right. Two, he screwed up again. He stumbled again by giving his dad this tool and saying, this has something for you to hopefully survive and fix this. 3, he went away. He let his father be there by himself, but also he's not smart enough, at least in the moment, to think without counting on his fingers. Like he visually, I mean, I know that's for us, as a viewer to tell us what he's thinking, but who does that, right? If I know there's 5 bullets in the gun, I just think, oh, I shot 4. Okay, there's 1 left. I don't go 1, 2, 3. That's for us, but also it's just to show he's a little slow, and then also the brilliance of letting him get caught, Gang-do get caught because he just can't leave his dad. Was solidified, his dad as a martyr for his kids. So he was the first hero in the film, I feel like. And Good then point. There were many subsequent heroes, I think, at the end, and everybody got their moment, I think. But
yeah, and it really does. That moment really underscores once again how everyone is basically a moron, because the dad dies because his son is so incompetent, so blindingly dumb, to be so confident, like, yeah, I got one more, like, you got it. But then everyone to think that this monster is finally going to come down from this one shot. Obviously that was just a stillborn idea that's just not going to float. And what the real insult to injury is how the monster didn't even want his dad. It just murdered him.
It just grabbed him and slammed him on the ground. And that was an interesting way for him to to die too. Like he didn't get thrown in the water. He didn't get eaten. He didn't get ripped in half. He just got slammed onto the ground so that he could be whole for his son. This is for us visually. Could be whole for his son to like see him and say goodbye and cover his face and honor him in some weird way or whatever. So
I bet there was a wrestling match in the writing process there, because my fear watching this was, oh my God, is the monster going to take him back to the den? And now the granddaughter is going to have to see her grandfather. Like that would be horrific. Yeah. And so I bet that would be in fact, I'm very much that type of filmmaker who's gonna be like, yep, you're going to sit through that.
Oh shit.
Yeah. But it was for the best. I think that, I didn't have to sit through that because it is.
I wouldn't have liked that.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm not saying that couldn't happen and that it wouldn't be good, but it feels for this film too heavy.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's just too much comedy for something that, and the reason because it would be persistent. He would just be there, right?
Yes.
For a long time in the movie, for like 30 minutes. And even when you leave, that scene, you'd know, oh, he's still there and she's dealing with that. Like, her dealing with hunger and taking care of a little boy is enough for me to remember.
For sure. And two, it also has its own brutality because the monster didn't take it. We can see a nice top-down wide shot of his father just bloodied and beaten. And that's enough punishment maybe, because that still sucks. Like, that's, I would say that's almost all I got. What, any final thoughts?
Just that Bong Joon Ho is a freaking master and is a amazing story. And anytime he makes something, it's so wonderful that his films have other meanings besides what it actually is below the surface. You can watch it and get something else or see something else or see the purpose behind it. I think that's the brilliance of what he does is that, I see the meaning, but the purpose for each of the decisions is different, right? The purpose for leaving the father is one thing. The purpose for, after he dies, the purpose for taking the little girl, the purpose for throwing in the beer bottle or the beer can, the purpose for all of these things all add up and there's meaning behind all of them. And it's so cool to watch a film and every time you watch it, you see something else.
Yeah.
And he does that better than anybody. Yeah. Really.
Agreed. Nice. I will deliver my final thoughts here in a few minutes, but what's your recommendation for the week?
I'm gonna recommend on Hulu, Welcome to Wrexham. I've started watching it and I absolutely adore it. I love it. It's Ryan Reynolds and what's his name from Always Sunny?
Rob McElhenney.
Rob McElhenney. I always forget his name. I don't know why, but they bought a football club in Wales, 5th tier football club. And I know a new episode came out last night. I haven't watched it yet, but I'm going to. And it looks 4 of them.
They dropped 4 this past week.
Oh, snap. Okay, great. They actually bought this club. So it's not like Ted Lasso in that it's a narrative. It's a documentary of what's going on and, losing and winning and relegation and promotion and dealing with players and dealing with townsfolk. Right. And, you see it's Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney. They're super famous people, but they're not persistent in the entire show. It's not just about them. It comes back to them a lot, but it's more about the town. It's more about the club, and they're doing it right. Like they're making this in the right way. I love seeing them on camera. Don't get me wrong, but I only love it because I don't see it all the time.
Yeah.
Right. And I love this club now, and I love this town, and I love that they're trying to save it, trying to build it up. And it's really cool. So, and it's ongoing at the moment, while we're recording this, which is exciting. And I love stuff like that. So yeah, Welcome to Wrexham on Hulu.
Great call. Yeah. I'm as you know, I'm in love with that show as well. And it's nice because it is documentary. the wins and losses are real. So
yeah,
I have no idea what happens, but it's really exciting to just kind of go along for the ride and say, it's been a great reminder of what it's like to be a sports fan, because I haven't been watching a lot of sports the last few years. And the thing I think I really forgot was the sense of community that comes along, and the excitement that comes along with being there together with everyone and hoping for the same thing and having zero control over the outcome. That's a really fun, exciting thing. And I'm vicariously getting that again just by watching the show. Good call. I have been struggling to pick I'll let you pick 1, 2, or 3.
3.
Oh, interesting call. Interesting.
Is it?
So I'm going to recommend The Ghost in the Darkness. It's a throwback film about, Val Kilmer and his desire to hang out in Africa. No, it stars Val Kilmer, and it's about some lions, man-eating lions in Africa. I forget which part. But yeah, it's a classic 90s film. If you enjoy kind of man versus nature stories, and if you've really liked The Host and Jaws, I think that's a great one worth revisiting. Or if you're, a listener who has not seen The Ghost in the Darkness, absolutely worth your time.
Isn't it based on a true story too?
Yeah.
Or like true events?
Yeah, true events. And so I think they fudge a little bit here and there, but the broad strokes are, very real.
Where like these lions would come and like take these people at night.
Yeah.
In these communities. And so they hired hunters to come in and try to find them and hunt them down.
Yeah.
But they took like a lot of people.
Yeah, they got after it. They were hungry lions.
Right. Right.
It's a really good film. Like I might just watch it again just to watch it because
that's a great recommendation, and it's great linked to The Host, because The Host is not real, not based on true events necessarily. Maybe what is it? The nature and stuff and our destroying nature, but not actual events of a monster actually taking people and eating them. But this actually was. And anytime that that going into a film like that, it makes it all the more serious. So just know that if you go watch that it's based on true events, it's much better.
So yeah, it's really intense. And I just love seeing Val Kilmer on screen.
Me too.
So stay tuned next week as we cover another creature, one called Predator. Get to the chopper. And so we're going to take a look at Arnold versus Weird Aliens and see what's going on there. And that's the original, whatever it is, 86, 87, the 80s. And we'll see if the world explodes when he shakes hands with Carl Weathers. And so if you're enjoying the show, if you want to, don't forget to subscribe and drop us a review and leave us a note if there's something you want us to cover and talk about, some of the things you find interesting. I want to give a shout out to Uwe. I've been wildly mispronouncing his name. It's spelled Uwe. And we were joking about this over email because he recommended that we do Ghost Story a while back, and we did. And at the end of the episode, he didn't realize I was talking to him when I was like, shout out to you.
It was that bad,
it
right?
Was that bad. And he was laughing about it, and I was like, look, here's my embarrassment, and I was trying to avoid dropping this other name for reasons that will be immediately obvious, but the only other name that starts with UWE that I'm familiar with is a director named Yu Bol, who is one of the most widely recognized worst directors. And I don't know if he's still working or not. I assume so. But just makes really awful movies. Ed Wood level bad. And everyone pronounces his name as Yu Bol. And so I just assumed that was also how you pronounce his, but it's Uwe. Once he, corrected me, I was like, see, this is why Todd reads all the names and why we're really bad at this. And so, shout out, because he also, by the way, he bought us a beer, a few beers. He bought us a keg. And so appreciate that, sir. I think one of these episodes we'll either crack open a beer, or if we continue to do these morning episodes, I'm not drinking a beer at noon. First thing, rolling out of bed and cracking open a bud. Not that I actually drink, whatever. And so, but maybe we'll have like a Bellini or a mimosa or something during a show
Thank
opening.
you, good sir.
Yeah, thanks, man. Highly appreciated. And if you, and this is the royal you, if anyone in the audience, wants to leave us a note or see the show notes on this episode, you can do that at thepestlepodcast.com/thehost.
And our quote of the day is from Jennifer Lawrence. We need to tell each other our stories. We need to show that everyone, our neighbors, our families, our community leaders, everyone we know is touched by corruption.
So this brings us to the other part of this film. And I didn't pick this quote just because I'm perpetually in love with Jennifer Lawrence, Todd. I know that's what you're thinking.
Didn't? Are you sure? Maybe because I am.
Played an influence, but not the deciding factor. But this film does have a true story behind it, actually, which, obviously, like you said, there's no actual monster fish that was, chomping on people, but it was born out of a very real event that happened in 2000, where the U.S. military dumped a bunch of formaldehyde into the Han River. And so I'll link this article from the New York Times, but I'm just going to quote from this article directly. And it says, July 15, 2000, the dumping of a toxic chemical at a U.S. military base here ignited a storm of protest Friday in Seoul, with implications for agreements governing the 37,000 U.S. troops in South Korea. About 100 demonstrators from a group called Green Korea United demonstrated outside the gates of the main base, calling for the dismissal of the top U.S. commander in Korea, General Thomas Schwartz. The group also called for punishment of those responsible for this crime under Korean law. The episode turned into a major embarrassment for the U.S. command, which issued a statement earlier Friday admitting that, quote, a one-time release of formaldehyde in February of this year did occur, end quote. It added that at most 20 gallons of the chemical were disposed of through the wastewater sewage system on the base. Towards the end, it says, the quote, the Americans despise the Korean people, end quote, said the protesters, shouting the words in Korean and holding up placards bearing the same message. So this was a real thing that happened, and it is important. Like, Jennifer Lawrence as an actor saying that we need to tell each other stories is so true, because honestly, I wouldn't have known about this incident if it wasn't for this film. And the year 2000, I was barely conscious. And so the idea that, I was ever going to realize that American military brass decided it was okay to dump a bunch of formaldehyde in some river. Wow. Like I was never going to catch on to that. So I really appreciate Bong Joon Ho finding a way to discuss it and bring it to light in an entertaining way. But there's so many things that I think, as an American, I'm watching this film and saying, I wonder if this means that. There's so many interpretations and layers of subtext that you could read into this film that I do. Like the idea of Agent Yellow at the end, right? They're trying to fight a virus outbreak. And they produce this chemical to fight the outbreak or biological terror, right? It annihilates all biological agents, which is a fancy way of saying life. It kills everything. And Agent Yellow is a really interesting term whenever you think about Agent Orange, right? A bunch of chemical warfare that we took to Vietnam. And just the wanton way that America handles other countries, and in a lot of ways our own, but from a military level, we are very just lax and careless and jerks, and just completely abhorrent force in the world for the way we treat the environment, other people's lives. Look at what we did in Cambodia, in the 60s, 70s. Even in our own states, right, with nuclear testing, we've just, and a lot of these monster stories arrive out of American militarism. Godzilla, right? I assume is some kind of commentary about the nuclear bombs we dropped, right, in World War II. And so this story is really smart in the multitude of ways that it's probably discussing the United States military impact on Korea. Because if you also start to think about the Han River as a dividing line in part between North and South Korea, there's all kinds of other little elements that you can read in between military intervention of America in Korea that created a North and South Korea maybe in the first place. So there's all kinds of elements that I think Bong Joon Ho is constantly discussing in a lot of his films. Same thing in Parasite. And it's interesting to think about in an abstract way if you want to tease out some of these ideas, but yet you can still enjoy all these things on their face. You can still enjoy this as a monster film, even without all of the extra subtext and thematic elements. Yeah, I appreciate him as a storyteller and just as a very, very thoughtful human being is my impression of him, having never seen an interview or let alone, talk to him in person.
Yeah, I'll just say this and then I'll end it. But that's really amazingly interesting because if you all the Americans in this film, which he never has Americans in this film, but all the Americans in this film are idiots, are brazen.
Yes, brazen idiots at that.
Brazen idiots. The first one, the doctor telling him, yeah, dump it all out. But you have the Korean doctor saying, but wait, that's going into the 100, trying to tell him that's not good, but he just is do it. And then you've got the other American, I guess, military guy, maybe, that when you first see the monster that tries to help everybody, but he's so just aggressive. He's just runs at him, remember?
Yeah.
And then you have the
cross-eyed doctor.
the cross-eyed doctor, which is hilarious and perfect. Yep. It's in there. It's gotta be right there. It's right there. Because a virus stays in one place, of course. All of the Americans jump out at you as complete brazen morons that are only out for themselves. Maybe except for the one guy, trying to help fight the monster when we first see the monster, but he's just so aggressive that he fails instantly, basically. You know what I mean? So anyway, I had no idea that it was based on a certain thing.
Yeah, and my last thought is, as you were talking about, I feel it's all echoed with a sentence from the father when he's talking to his son, right, Gangdu, and he realizes, hey, map number 4 is really upset because you took one of their squid legs. They only had 9 instead of 10. And what he says is, think about it from the customer's perspective. You wouldn't want people messing with your stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the bigger conversation is stop messing with other people's stuff.
Yes, exactly.
And it's a simple idea that I think we all appreciate.
Yeah. I love that it comes from Dad.
Yes.
Anyway, great points, man. Thank you for all that insight. I had a great time. It was fantastic. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Host. Make sure to join us next week. We're covering Predator, like Wes said, and share us with your friends. Please subscribe, review, all that good stuff. Comment. Let us know what you'd like to hear us cover. We always are open to suggestions. And until next time, I'm Todd.
I'm Wes.
Go watch some movies.